Greetings, nerds. This is Will Polk, producer of the Cine Nerd Podcast with our host, Sarah Belmont. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Cine Nerd Presents Blur Trek. This week, we got a new sneak peek for the upcoming season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and it shows the start of Commander Una Chen Riley's, played by Rebecca Romijn's, trial for being a genetically engineered Illyrian. Now, if you recall, Commander Una Chen Riley, also known as Number One, was arrested at the end of Season 1 by Starfleet for being genetically engineered. Number One's fate is a major cliffhanger going into Season 2. So let's take a quick look at the trailer that was dropped over this past weekend.
This court is now in session. Joining me as judges in this tribunal are Space Command Representative Zust Tlagel and Starfleet Commander Chip. Commander Chin Riley, do you consent to Captain Battelle as the prosecuting officer?
I do.
Now here we have the court-martial for Commander Una Chen Riley starting. We see the Judge Advocate General. We see the symbol for that office, of course. We've seen similar JAG officers in the past. For example, Captain Philippa Lavoie, who was the prosecutor in the Stargazer and later a judge in the Judge Advocate's office when Data was trying to be determined whether or not he had his rights as far as an android. But getting back to this episode, the clip opens with the chief judge of the tribunal asking if she consents to Captain Battelle being the prosecuting officer in the trial against her here. And Una agrees, and Battelle reads the charges against her. The reason why this is of note is because Captain Battelle is a friend and has had a romantic relationship, friends with benefits, with Captain Pike. She's also another command level officer, and this, of course, really is setting up I'm sure, a very dramatic tension between Captain Pike and Captain Battelle and their personal relationship that will probably get explored some in this second season when this trial progresses. A couple of notes about the tribunal itself. Of course, we see Commander Chipko, who looks to be Vulcan. We also have a Tellarite as part of the three-judge tribunal, and it looks like, well, I don't know if we're at a star base or if we're back at Starfleet headquarters on Earth. But another thing about this scene is it's very reminiscent of the episode Court Martial, and also we also saw the Court Martial of Lieutenant Commander Worf in the episode of Rules of Engagement. Let me know what you think about other details you may have noticed in the courtroom itself as we transition now to the next scene.
Let the charges be read.
Lieutenant Commander Una Chen Riley has been formally charged with violating Starfleet Regulation 614617, prohibiting permanent DNA modification as well as submitting false information to Starfleet, and 2 counts of sedition.
Now here in the second clip, we see several things. First, just to give a cool little Star Trek geek note here, with the whenever the data card was fed into the computer there, that's a callback to the original series with the little data cards that, if you recall, they used to have those wafers that were put into the Enterprise computers and other Starfleet computers in the original series. So nice little note there as far as continuity between the original series and Strange New Worlds. But as noted here, Una was charged with violating Starfleet regulations, in particular the 614617, prohibiting permanent DNA modification. Now, we learned about the DNA modification in the episode Ghost of Illyria in Season 1, where she had to disclose that she was genetically modified when she did not have the impacts from the other sickness that the crew had contracted when they were visiting an outpost. And so the fact that the prosecution's case is based on genetically engineering and noting that genetic engineering is barred by the United Federation of Planets, and that is steeped in the Star Trek lore because of the eugenics wars. which, of course, that was when the augments rose up to try to conquer Earth. And, of course, those augments were led by Khan Noonien Singh. So those were some of the things that were transpiring here, and why genetic engineering is such a one of the Star Trek that has great significance because of the history on Earth and other planets as well, as far as genetic engineering. Now, this was the first time we learned about it in live action, but actually in D.C. Fontana's book, Vulcan's Glory, it was number one, was outed as an Illyrian, and the genetic engineering was disclosed in that book way back in 1989 when the book Vulcan's Glory was written. So this has been something that from the Star Trek books was brought into live action and made canon. So let's go to the next clip now.
How do you plead, Commander?
Not guilty.
When did you first meet Una Chin Ryan?
On my first day as an ensign on the Enterprise.
She was part of the rescue mission that found me after I escaped from a Gorn breeding planet.
You have a very unique last name. Do you have any relation to Khan Noonien Singh?
Yes.
Now, here we get several things going on here. First of all, we get Commander Una Chin Raleigh entering their plea, which of course is not guilty. Now, I think this is very critical here because I think a couple things are probably going to happen here. One, I think the Defense Council is probably going to argue that Una's genetic engineering was done without her consent, and that she's always been a very loyal and dedicated Starfleet officer. Two, I think, thinking back to the episode Ghost of Valyria, where Una disclosed to Captain Pike that she was genetically engineered Illyrian, and of course she offered her resignation. Captain Pike refused to accept it because he recognized that, again, she was a very loyal officer, and also thinking about the bigger points about genetic engineering in her case, and the fact that it might not have been done without her consent. It was done in a way to not be like the augments, in that the augments are really trying to, of course, gain power and influence and negative outcomes, whereas the Illyrians seem to be doing things to make sure that they were genetically engineered in a beneficial standpoint. So, of course, this is discussed when you think about the ethics surrounding genetic engineering and some of the things that we're dealing with now in the world, as far as these questions that come up, and also, so again, this is a great way how Star Trek tries to weave into their stories real life implications of actual science and ethics that we're dealing with now. Another thing that came into this episode was, in this clip, is where Spock talks about the first time he met Una, and it was actually a short trek in the in between one of the seasons of Star Trek Discovery, and of course he was Ensign Spock, and Spock and Una were trapped on a turbo lift, and it's a very, very good short trek. If you haven't seen it, go to Paramount Plus and check it out. You'll really enjoy it. And then the last part of this clip, of course, as I noted before, we've heard about Khan Noonien Singh, and Leon is a descendant of Khan Noonien Singh. And again, with in the episode Ghost of Valyria, Leon and Una had a discussion prior to Leon learning that Una, in fact, was also an augment, about her ancestry, and being that, Khan is she's a descendant of him, and so again, this really sets up the dramatic tension between Una and Leon, and of course they did deal with it, but also Una is responsible for Leon entering Starfleet because, as she noted here, Leon was rescued by Una from the Gorn on the SS Puget Sound. So a lot's going on in this particular clip, but this sort of backstory to just sort of help you when the season comes. Hopefully, if you haven't had a chance to rewatch season 1, those are some of the high points as far as the things that were going on as a backdrop here in this scene. Now,
Did you ever suspect Una to be an Illyrian?
No, I did not.
Did you ever get the sense that Commander Chin Riley was hiding something?
Never.
Now, again, this gets back to the point I was just making about Leon and Una having their discussions about Una's background as an augment. And of course, prior to the events of Ghost of Valyria, in particular, when Una and Leon was trying to have a explosion in the warp core because of the light sickness that was transmitted onto the ship. That was when Una had to basically out herself to save Leon and save the Enterprise. And so, after that scene, of course, they were having to deal with the ramifications of that. So that's where this particular note, as far as whether or not Leon knew that Una was hiding something beforehand, comes into play with this particular scene. And let's go to the final clip.
Just that she was discreet and empathetic and handled personal matters with great care.
Yes, I did get the sense that she was hiding something.
What was she hiding?
So in this final clip here from this sneak peek of the episode where Una's on trial, we have Dr. Mbenga talking about Una's capacity to be discreet and in personnel matters and personal matters. And of course, this goes back to Ghost of Valyria, where of course, part of the reason why she was outed to begin with was because it was his actions of disabling a component of the biofilters on the transporter of the Enterprise that allowed for the sickness to get on board the starship to begin with. There was a reason why that happened. So there was that piece, but then given that what Una discovered, she gave him grace in resolving the issue in that particular matter, and also he recognized her as well, and also because she got a second chance until Captain Patel came to arrest her at the end of season 1. And so there was that component. And then the other thing that was going on in this scene was Spock saying that there was something that Una, he did think that she was hiding something. So I'm wondering if this goes back to the short treks that I had mentioned earlier in this review of this sneak peek, because he and Una during their time in that short trek did learn a lot about one another when they were trapped in that turbo lift. So maybe that has something to do with it, or maybe it's something else that came out in season 1. So let me know what you think Spock's about to say in this scene in the upcoming episode. Before I close, though, just a couple quick little notes. As I noted earlier, we had the nice little callback to the data chip cards that were from the original series. Of course, as far as the dress uniforms, very reminiscent of the uniforms that we saw in the original series, as far as material and some of the accoutrements part of it. Of course, the awards that people have, of course, looks like they're in their delta shape as far as like the Enterprise and stuff, of course, and we've seen it in other formats too from other badges as far as other parts of Starfleet. So that was a very, very nice touch, and really excited for this season. And I'll continue as we get closer to the season. I will continue these. Just a couple quick notes as far as what's going on. Of course, we know that there is the writer's strike going on right now, and the showrunner for Star Trek: Strange New Worlds did note that due to the writer's strike, which we're 100% in support of the writers getting what they need, but it is going to impact the production for season 3, because right now they can't do any writing or anything for the scripts for the upcoming season. So it is impacting production, but we stand in support of the Writers Guild of America. Of course, there's the Screen Actors Guild and the Directors Guild also in the process of trying to negotiate their arrangements with the studios. So we here on the podcast will be talking about that, keeping up on that. And if you want to learn more about those kind of things, be sure to follow our main show. Also, speaking of which, please subscribe to this. This is my second episode of the Blurred Trek show here on the Cena Nerd channel. You see below there on the scroll that you can follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you like to listen to podcasts in audio form, you can go to www.cinernerdpodcast.com to listen to our shows. We drop them every Friday with me and my host, Sarah Belmont. And be sure to hit that notification here so that whenever this show comes up or our main podcast goes up, you'll not miss a single episode. So thank you so much for joining me. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about the sneak peek. I'd love to hear from you. And until then, live long and prosper.